All right. Well, welcome everybody today on our talk about field coil speakers with Colin King of Gestalt Audio and Wolf von Langa himself, the man who's going to talk about his speakers and his company. So Colin King is the U.S. distributor of Wolf von Langa, amongst many other high-end audio manufacturers. He has a focus on high-efficiency speakers, triodes, and analog. He's in Tennessee. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Colin, and then he can then hand it over to Wolf. Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I kind of joked earlier. I'll be brief because you all are not here to hear me talk. Wolf is going to be the interesting one. I import these amazing field coil loudspeakers into the United States. I've got a couple of clients in San Francisco. I think Steve, I think Steve M might be calling Steve out, but these are remarkable. The first time I heard them, I was shocked because they are the truest to timbre loudspeaker I'd ever heard. I think that the line is really interesting. I was actually, yeah, hey, Chris. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. There's Steve, yeah. I actually think that the line is it's wonderful. It has options from like $10,000 all the way up to $100,000 for mini room sizes. And Jim and I were actually talking about this. So the three audio frame speakers at the top of the line are really quite interesting conceptually to me because they're for different listeners. Like one is the London is a full range driver augmented on the bottom with two 15-inch field coil bass drivers. It's very, very coherent. There's like this natural presentation that is it's disarming. Really, really fun speaker. The Chicago is a very kind of modern broadband sound. I've got a lot of clients that hear other typical, like, if you hear kind of, like a Wilson or a Magico or something like that, you have a sound in your mind of what you're looking for. That speaker is very interesting to quite a lot of people. And then the Berlin is horns, and it's captivating to me. I love horns, like I'm a horn person. So the fact that you have these three different approaches, and it's not like one is better than the other. These are just different loudspeakers for different people. I love that. I think that's really, really cool. Wolf himself, he's brilliant. He's also a super nice guy, and I am going to shut up and let him talk.
Thank you for introducing. We began a few minutes ago, and I wanted to explain in short words what it has to do with field coil technology at all. Because the speaker industry, I think we in the late 30s almost moved to permanent loudspeakers, permanent magnet loudspeakers, which are much less expensive, and field coil technology was also, because in the early days you need a power supply, and you need rectification, therefore, because it has to be driven with DC. So there was a lot of support needed, because rectifier tubes will have to be replaced, and a lot of things more like this in these days. Personally, my starting point with field coil loudspeakers was that I, by luck, got a pair of the very early Voigt drivers. These are wideband speakers originally invented in England. I think it was at these days one of the few competitors to the United States Bell company, which is better known with the brand name Western Electric, who equipped theaters and halls with large horns. And the main reason was they had to be really high efficient, because there was no amplification with a lot of wattage, what we know today. Today we have no problems to have amplifiers with 1,000 or even 2,000 watts capable to deliver. In these days, a few watts were only necessary to fill halls, and therefore a lot of magnetic power on one side was needed, and the field coil technology was the only one at these days. There was no permanent magnet, which was able to be built with the size so the electromagnet was used, and I think this was the only reason at these days, because there was no alternative. My impression after I used also the wideband speaker I got with the field coil with this Voigt driver was that it was even more natural sounding, and gave me a lot of more rhythm and details in the music I liked very much. And this was really, for me, it was the starting point. Let me tell you that I owned a hi-fi store about 35 years ago, and I had a lot of very, very good equipment at these days, and so I had the chance to handle and learn a lot with other brands, and still in the background I collected a lot of these historic speakers, also permanent magnet speakers from Western, RCA, and of course the German company called Klangfilm, which was a part of Siemens at these days. The comparison was in the end landed me to the decision to go deeper in this and construct own speakers based on this technology. Our modern field coil speaker are different from the old ones. The old ones were built for maximum efficiency. Today, because we have power in the amplifiers, and there is no need to listen to music with only a tenth of a watt or 1 watt, for example. So the efficiency theme was not the most important. it was more with the linearity and some technical things which were to be improved over the old ones. In the end, the well-known Lansing, the James B. Lansing, was the ready speaker systems, which were the most impressive for me compared to a lot of other historical stuff. And I began to make researches about his ideas behind his magnets and his speakers. In the end, 2009, I began selling the developed speakers, which took us. We are a small family company with only a few guys. We working together, and 2009 we began to sell our things the first time. And the curious thing is, or the special thing is, we only sold transducers for several years, and never had in mind to build ready systems. So the initial idea was to make only loudspeaker chassis and sell them to specialists. Later on, there were many requests from people. They bought things from us, and I went also to audio shows and talked to people, and they asked me, how do they sound? And then we began building ready speaker systems. At the moment, we are most sold and most commercial product is a small speaker. You might know it's called Son, or in the meantime we have an upgraded version of that, which is named Ultima. But they look exactly the same, and the main goal was that everybody can position these speakers in a normal environment and listening room. Colin said he loves horns, and this is everybody who knows horns. We know that they are really big, and for me personally, it was never really interesting to listen in halls. I like to listen to music in a comfortable area with chilly, maybe 20, 30 or 40 square meters, and to live in this room also, not only to have a music equipment and be there. So it is necessary to have a smaller system. And this is the result with the speaker about, I think, 90 centimeters high normally, and only 40 centimeters wide. And you can really position that. And the main improvement to the vintage Field Coil speakers is that we made a lot of research regarding the power supply feeding the system on the one hand, and on the other hand, to have a really homogeneous magnetic field where the voice coil moves. So with a lot of other technical details, like very soft suspended and relatively large cone for the dimension of the speaker system at all. We have the possibility also to listen at very low volumes. On the other side, you can play very loud if you have a bit more power. But the benefit is when you have a soft suspended speaker, a very soft suspended speaker, you don't need much energy to move the cone, and especially to move it only slightly, or to following every smallest change of the music signal. And the old speakers were largely hard suspended, so this is needed to have a high efficiency. And on the other side, you need large and larger volumes to drive these speakers and to get bass out of that. In the mid-range, you need these large horns, which are acting like you smaller the directivity of sound we compare to a direct radiating system. Compared to direct speakers, a horn is much more directive, and therefore most horns are only sounding, for my ears at least, comfortable in a larger distance. And this is exactly what they were constructed for in the late 20s. Nobody thought ever to use them to listen to them in a distance from 3 or 4 meters, which is the position at most of our homes. Nevertheless, horns are thrilling peoples. To my experience, it has to do a lot of with the appearance of such large things. I personally also at the last high-end Munich, which is only a few weeks ago, there were a lot of really large systems in 200 square meters or about this size rooms. But none of these systems were able to reproduce sound sources in the right dimensions. So if you hear a piano, it was like the piano is 10 or 15 meters wide. If you hear voices, you have a voice which is like a door. The audio frame Berlin, which is also a horn system, I had a lot of work to do it different, because I don't believe that this is the performance this comes close to reality. In my opinion, like Colin said, we make the top of the line speakers audio frame series, it is called, and it consists of 3 models for different tastes of people. Of course, they are not as big as some horns are, but if you have the right room, and I have to say this, and this is true for all audio frame systems, because in the bass we don't use a horn. we use a so-called open baffle construction. So the large cone areas are moving in free air. And this has to do with, you probably know, a lot of loudspeaker manufacturers have the problem that the enclosures sound a lot. This has to do with the surface. If you compare the surface of loudspeaker enclosures to the radiating cones, you see instantly that it is a large difference, and the surface of the enclosure is much larger than the speaker cone itself. So in most cases, the enclosure of loudspeakers, we are doing a lot of sound, even if they move only slightly. But as the surface is so large, you are almost not able to avoid any radiation from the enclosure. So people go for aluminum constructions or extremely stiff constructions to avoid the sound transfer through the enclosure. But it is not really possible to do this. You can take a lot of effort to minimize that, but you cannot null it. So the audio frame series, in difference to the Son enclosure, which was mainly developed for small and for the possibility to position it everywhere, is a dipole speaker, which uses freely moving cones. The difference or the difficulty in this is that you have to build a speaker which itself does not coloration to the sound. And with the soft suspension and the large paper cones, we have a bass mid-range speaker developed, which is acting really, really good in this discipline. And you don't have to use an enclosure. But the disadvantage is that you have to position it at some points in your room. And this is not always an easy thing, because people have tables, chairs, sofas, and whatever in the room. And most of our people, of our clients, they do not build their rooms around the speakers. They just want to put the speakers in their living room. And so what I want to say is, even if the audio frame series gives you, in my opinion, the best reproduction quality we can really use and build, it is necessary to have a matching room. It is like think about having an excellent speaker in your bathroom. So it will never perform really nice. And this is the same with all speakers, of course. You need some certain acoustic qualities in the room. And the audio frame series, and this is, I think, the only disadvantage is, you will hear every detail and every changings to the room, in addition, of course, to the sources and what you use. So I spoke a lot of things, and I would like to hear some questions, or in which things you want to hear more from me regarding our speakers. So
that was excellent. Thank you, Wolf. I would like, before the other members ask some questions, If you could talk a little bit about the development of your power supplies for the field the voice coils, because I know that is something you've worked a lot on as well. And I know that can make quite a bit, everything else being the same, the type and the quality of the power supply can really drive differences in the sound and the ability to get the most out of those field coils, the voice coils. And maybe you could speak a little bit about the benefits or disadvantages of tube-based versus solid-state-based power supplies for these, because I know both are available. Uh, anyway, speak a little bit on the power supplies. That would be great.
Okay. A huge difference is also in the early days, and they had only tubes for rectification, so they needed to wind the field coils a little bit different as we do this today. This has more reasons. A tube is not able to rectify a normal standard tube. There are tubes which they can, but they are also large, expensive, and so on. So they used high resistive field coils in the very beginning. But in the end, the magnetic field is only defined by the length of the wire which is winded, and the current which flows. So there is nothing of voltage or other things, technicals. So the only thing which defines the magnetic field, if you use a field coil to generate it, is with the length of the wire and the current it feeds. So the power supply, from the technical view, must be not different if you use a tube or solid state rectifier, for example. But the truth is, it sounds different. And this has to do with the inner resistance of the rectifiers, almost. And the other thing is, a loudspeaker is defined, or you can define that with technicals through small parameters. These were two Australian guys who were the two guys made a lot of mathematics and defined some things that people can, knowing these parameters, we can use the speakers. And these small parameters are this technical description of the speaker, of the moving parts, of the magnet field, and everything. So to make them constant, what it is really needed, that the speaker is almost sounding like it should. In the end, if everything is built, you don't want that temperature difference or humidity differences will let the speaker sound very different. So you have to make these parameters constant. And the early days, the electromagnets were fed with voltage. So if they get warm, and they do, if you use a lot of current, your normally aluminium or copper wire gets warm, and every metal will change the resistance through changing the temperature. So with the actual resistance will raise with the temperature. So if you feed that with the voltage power supply, you change the Thiele small parameters a lot, because the magnetic field weakens when it gets warm. So we developed a constant current supply, which we defines a certain current, and as the name says, is constant. To have this done in a really good quality, so without noise or without oscillation, because we have a large inductance in the field coil, with the iron core and everything like this. It's not as easy. Of course, you can take a transformer and a few diodes and maybe a capacitor, and this is a voltage source, and feed your field coil speaker with that. And if you switch them on constantly, it gets a certain temperature and it is nearly stable. But if you want to switch them off and on to save money or AC current, so the parameters would change a lot. On the other side, if we move the voice coil in a magnet, and this is a large difference, or this is the explanation where is the difference between field coil magnets and permanent magnets. The permanent magnet is loaded once, so it have a certain magnetic field. And if you move a voice coil in that, and you feed the voice coil with current with a music signal or with impulses, then you weaken the magnetic field for a certain time, because you take the power of it. You want to move a cone, you take power out of the system, but you can't hold it constant. With the magnet is loaded once and will reactivate, but this will take some time. So it is a steady game of weakening and reloading. In a field coil system, which is fed by a constant current, the field does not weaken really, because if the current is constant, your magnetic field keeps constant. And so if you take out power, the power supply acts like delivering power to the magnet system, and this is more constant than any permanent magnet. So of course, the technology is not the same like 1930 or 1940, where we began with permanent magnets made of materials like aluminium, nickel, and cobalt. Therefore, the magnets were called Alnico. And Alnico 5 was a material which was the first time so small that you can use it as a transportable, a permanent magnet for speakers. And indeed, it behaves different to the later invented ferrite magnets, which were less expensive. And as the history proves it, a lot of things are in development because we costs. And newer things like neodymium magnets, they are stronger than the Alnico versions, but the most benefit for the industry is the weight. you have to understand that with the whole public address business is much larger than the home hi-fi stereo business, and therefore the speakers have to be moved. First, when you manufacture the things, first you manufacture the magnets. The other guy is manufacturing the speakers. So you have, the first time you have to move the weight from the magnets, from the manufactured magnets to the loudspeaker factory. Ferrit was and Alnico they were really heavy. So in the 40s, in the 50s, it was not seldom that a woofer, a big woofer, weighs 12, 15 kilograms. Compared to the neodymium magnets or to the rare earth magnets, this is shockingly low. So nowadays you need maybe 150 or 200 gram magnet material to make a magnet with the same magnetic field or the same strength of magnetic field. And
Wow.
This is, of course, a large disadvantage of field coil, because we need a power supply and the magnets are heavy again. So it will never be a solution for the future business in anything. But for guys who care a lot of how it sounds, I think this is really the best way to do speaker magnets, even if it is very much costly to produce it. Yeah, in our woofers, for example, there are more than 3 kilograms of copper in each magnet construction. So at least this, yeah. So and another thing you asked is the difference between tube and solid state. We actually use no tubes for our power supplies because it is very costly, and with our technology, also you lose a lot of more energy because tubes have to be heated, and they have much more losses than a solid state rectifier. And we did both. We learned that with special circuitry and special schematics, we can have a really, really good performance. Therefore, we use indeed only solid state power supplies for the.
We got some questions, Wolf, from some of the attendees today. This gentleman asks, please elaborate on the flexibilities or tuning options within the crossover, and please describe the quality and selection of the parts in the crossover.
Hey, Jim and Wolf, before we get off the power supply topic, really quick, I want to kind of describe like one quick thing. So one of the things to think about, just to kind of give you the concept here. So all of these are electromagnets, right? We're talking about electromagnetic drivers, so the speakers ship with a power supply. Depending on the model and how many field coil drivers are in it, the size of the power supply can go from, maybe like a small shoebox to a bit larger, but it's still quite compact. And as Wolf was talking about, these are using all of his constant current source power supplies. Each one is individually adjustable. And this is something that if you're coming from like a traditional loudspeaker with permanent magnets, you don't really, think about. But he mentioned the Thiel small parameters. You get to adjust those on the fly with a field coil driver. And that means that there's a gauge, and you can see how much current that you're applying to the magnet. And that changes how the magnet operates, right? So more current, stronger magnetic field. The sound of the driver changes. Its parameters, the way it interfaces with the amplifier changes, the way that it sounds in your system, in your room changes. And there's this really nice Goldilocks zone where you have kind of the freedom to tune these things both to your tastes and your system. And it's one of these things that when you have really, really fine-grained adjustability and you can dial these things into your preferences and you get used to that, then you go back and you've got like another just kind of, the speaker is what it is, right? You buy some permanent magnet speaker and that speaker is the way it's going to be. You really, really miss the ability to be able to adjust and tune these things, both, again, like to your tastes, your room, and your amplifier. Okay.
That's a good, very important point. Thank you. So, Wolf, maybe elaborate a little bit about your crossovers, what kind of parts or how you pick your parts, and are there, this person is asking, is there any flexibility options within the crossover? I don't know if there's something that you offer to.
Yeah. This is different for different speakers because we intended to manufacture the speakers, and excuse for that, of course, we are not able to compete with Asian companies regarding prices. We manufacture really everything nearby, and everything is done here in Germany. So we have, of course, different labor costs and so on. And of course, we have different quantities we build. Yeah. But the Son and the Ultima speakers are intended to be used from people who want to listen to music and are not interested in every technical detail you might change or test or modify. Colin, I forgot this. Colin, of course, told you that there are adjustments which are not found in normal speakers, in standard speakers. And these adjustments are really important. But you have like a volume knob on the power supply, and we deliver a factory set. So the field current is specified. We do impedance measurements at the factory, and we also pairwise. And we define a certain current for every speaker pair. Years ago, we did not do that because we believed in that people listen and understand. Now we want to be certain that people who are not interested in every technical detail are able to reproduce that. And you have an ampere meter in the power supply, so you can adjust the factory setting. But of course, you are able to change this in a meaningful way. And as Colin said, you can fine-tune the speaker. If you call it to room acoustics or to your amplification setup or whatever, you can alter it a little bit. And this means you can in our Son and Ultima systems we have an air motion transformer, which is not field coil. This has also to do with the fact that the field coil effect gets lower as the moving mass gets lower. Yeah, because what I told you, that the magnet field gets weakened if we take out music from the system. the high frequency part of our music has less energy, much less energy. So the effect is smaller, but it is there, and people who know that and compare that, if you have the possibility to really compare the same cone and the same construction with the 2 different or 3 or 4 different magnet types, you will instantly hear that. Yeah, but a lot of technicians don't believe that. Even if it is provable, if you measure it, we have a different distortion and harmonic structure. Okay, and the audio frame products are built for people who wants to play around with the system. And therefore, the crossover we use in Son and Ultima, they are fixed. So the only possibility you can alter things is, in fact, the power supply of the Field Coil speaker, of the main speaker. In the audio frame products, depending on which model, you can alter, for example, with the model London, you can alter with the bass and the main system, the wide range speaker with different currents or magnetic strength. And the built-in crossovers are developed to make adjustments almost to different room acoustics. One can say also 2 different personal preferences of listening to music, but this would mean, on the other hand, that we want people to be able to make the speakers sound different in a way I don't like this to communicate, because if you misadjust the crossover, the outcome is not like we developed the speaker, and you could do this, yeah, of course, but we believe in people that they do things with certain knowledge and with listening, and that they be aware how things change. So you can adjust the level of the high frequency part. You can adjust with the woofers. We have at least 2 woofers in the audio frame systems, which you can connect in series or parallel. Yeah, because of the large cones, and I call them not only woofers, I call them woofer mid-range transducers, because these nearly 40 centimeters or 15-16-inch large woofer constructions are really able to perform up to 2.5 kilohertz. And this not bad, and not with bad transients. They are really, really fast in the upper registers. And this is fact of the field coil technology, and therefore we avoid to cut them really early. So in the case of London, which consists of 2 woofers and a wide band speaker on top with the electromagnet, one could imagine that we could cut them at 100 hertz, which is the most defined crossover between a sub and a main system, or or something like this. Yeah. But this wouldn't be as nice as it is if you let the woofer mid-range system perform much higher. So we don't cut that with 12 or 18 or 24 dBs. We always are interested to cut them as slightly or low as possible. And to make it possible that the speaker tone areas are not switching at a certain moment from one to the other. This would be also difficult because of the size of the woofers. Yeah, we have 16 inches, for example. Imagine you have double two times 16 inches, which is about 80 centimeters height. If you connect them in parallel and they perform, let's say, to 800 or 1000 hertz, depending on your listening position, you would have a comb filter effect, because the lower woofer would reproduce exactly the same as the upper, but the listening distance will change to independence of your listening distance altogether. But if you imagine that they are positioned on top of the other, the distance of the center of each woofer will be different to your ear. So you can use them in parallel in certain rooms where you have non-reflective floors, for example, to minimize this effect. Yeah, if you have carpets or other dampening materials on the floor, you can use them in parallel and have a little bit more efficiency. But with the crossover allows also to connect them in series. And then the lower speaker is cut earlier. So you don't have these comb filter effects. In the mid-range, you can always adjust the level. And this is done by, we have different constructions. We have a transformer in some models, or we have a precision resistance which you can connect with different bridges, with wire bridges, because this will ensure that the contact resistance we will not change and is not sensible to movements of the whole speaker and vibrations and resonances. And in the end, you can also level the high frequency speaker and also do slight adjustments regarding the steepness of roll-off. But you can't adjust it from 6 dB to 12 dB or something like this. Yeah, this is a crossover which is developed, of course, by simulations and measurements, and then we listened a lot, and therefore we use also different kind of capacitors or inductors. We found several brands we like very much because the capacitors are almost not hearable. And you would not believe that, but especially maybe in the system Berlin, which has high efficient mid-range and high frequency horns, you would instantly hear if you change a capacitor from one brand to the other, even it has the exactly same values and the exactly same technical descriptions. They are really sounding different. And if you hear a violin or a piano, it is extremely hearable how natural it is sounding with certain capacitors and with others not. This there are awful expensive parts, components in the market. And I can say we can't follow the prices in most cases regarding the sound outcome. And for example, Vima, a German company which is building small red capacitors which are widely used in electronics, but they are not so famous as loudspeaker capacitors for unknown reasons. Maybe it depends on that they are not closer tolerated with, so they might change plus or minus 10-15% in values. But we select them in-house, and therefore we can use them also. And we use, of course, other film capacitors. And in case of the Son speaker, there is a nice company, Dülund, which makes really handmade copper cast capacitors. And these capacitors, in our experience, almost sound like they were not there. We saw from the very beginning the Vima capacitors, for example, they need really that you play the speaker for at least 50, 60, 70 hours. This is, I think, the thing that changes most in a speaker. To our experience, the speaker itself, and in the case of our productions, does not change a lot if they are brand new or if they are played 100 hours, except the wide range speaker, which has extremely light paper cone. And things happens with the paper cone. I can't describe really what is going on, but they need time. But I think the crossover parts are mostly the changing parts. And if you speak about break-in of speakers.
Thank you. I have two people asked if you can talk about the sound quality or characteristics. They say chasing, but between the London and the Chicago and the Berlin, if you could, of those three speakers, could you talk about, in your mind, the biggest differences and how they present music and sound, and a little bit elaborate on that?
Yeah, because sound waves are different from wavelength and their time behavior. We saw bass tones transport a lot more energy than high frequencies. It is like if you want to reproduce everything with one cone, which was the idea of Mr. Voigt, who developed this wideband speaker with 1926 or 27. And a lot of twin cone speakers are existing in copy today. There are a few German famous brands who copy them for years. There are brands from Japan and from other countries, Coral or Fostex, and we are well known. Everybody wanted to copy this speaker because it is so nice that you have everything with one part reproduced and you don't need any crossover or anything else. But in the end, it is not as easy, or you have to accept that a speaker cone, which is 160 millimeters in diameter, which is 160 in inches. It's about 6 inch, 6.5 inch or something. It has a certain mass. We have a new cone development of the whole wideband cone, which is weighing with voice coil, suspension, the Y connection wires, and the whole cone weighs less than 8 grams. But 8 grams, to move them with 20 kilohertz would demand extremely stiff and a high energy to drive it as fast and as precisely. So a wide range speaker will never perform as fast and detailed as an air motion transformer, for example, the opposite, which acts much faster if you measure that. So the outcome is very different. You have a much smoother performance with a wide range system. If you really measure that, if you measure the frequency response of such a cone, you will recognize, if you don't cheat, that there are a lot of dips and peaks, and if you look at this, you might think, oh, what an awful performer. But in the end, if you have a certain distance, even the presence peak, which is normally, because the acoustic and technical inherent things which such a cone, if you have a strength magnet field, you have a peak in such cones, which is about in the region of 10 kilohertz. And this is if you go 1 meter apart, which is a normal measurement distance, you have peak levels from maybe 12, 15 dBs over the other regions. So the interesting thing is, if you measure that same speaker in a distance of 5 meters, where you listen to, this peak gets down to only 2 or 3 dB. And nevertheless, it is less detailed, but there are people who like that much better.
You're talking about, and you're speaking about the London right now.
Yeah, we compared from the London especially to the Chicago, which has also the air motion transformer, and Chicago acts really like a modern speaker, which performs from 30 hertz to 30 kilohertz without problems, and in a really right sounding reproduction way. But if you listen to music with Chicago compared to London, you hear a lot more things in the music and pay attention to things which might be not be important for you. If you, for example, go to classical music halls and listen to music, to large orchestras, for some of us, they won't be able to hear the triangle, or to hear a lot of if the instrument is blown and you have certain records. You hear how the musician is going to blow in the instrument, and you hear these fine things. You never hear this if you hear the musician in the street performing, or you hear that in the club if you are 10 meters apart. And this is the description how the difference is between our London and the Chicago. Yeah, if you prefer to hear it more like it is native, let's say it like this, yeah, I think you will prefer the London. Even if you sometimes miss these things, if you know this from other systems, that there are such small details which can be heard in the record.
Mhm.
Yeah. And in the Chicago and in the Berlin also, you will hear every detail. And the difference between Chicago and Berlin now, I would describe it like um, um, Berlin as a horn speaker puts the music in your face. And you have to like that. If you ever compare horns to a direct radiating speaker, you know what I'm talking about. That even if the Berlin is adjusted to be also right sounding, but everything is much more direct, and everything is much more straight, and both are performing up to about 30 kilohertz. So from the frequency response, there's almost no difference between these two systems, but they sound different because of the directivity and the efficiency of especially the mid-range and high-frequency part.
Would it be fair to say the Berlin puts the musicians more in your room, and they are here versus something where you are there, and you would it's more a more forward sounding presentation versus the Chicago?
I would not agree.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm just
I think I would also ask Colin to say a few words. He has a much better English than mine. Excuse me for that. Um, um,
Yeah, well,
Both speakers put musicians in your room, I think, and with Chicago as well, and also London. Is not like there is a curtain between you and the music. Not at all. It is a different way to listen to. Like I said, with the two latter performers. Um, Let you hear much more details without if you look at the frequency response, the high frequency part is lifted or something. This is not true in our speaker systems. So we always have a slightly fallen frequency response regarding to the top highs. But of course, the directivity of the speakers are totally different. The horn is really direct and concentrates the complete sound and focuses this on your listening position. Whereas Chicago is much more wider and lets you hear more of your personal room. So if people are speaking about how reverberation or how the room is implemented in the music reproduction, then Chicago is much more like you listen in your own room. And I think Berlin, if it is set up in a matching room, we will let you hear a lot more of the record details. So like you are maybe in the recording studio.
Okay.
Like more like a monitor or something like this. Chicago fills the room as London, but in a different way.
That's a very good description. Go.
I can kind of speak subjectively about this, right? The important thing in my experience with all three of these is that they have, a signature house sound, right? Like they all sound like Wolf von Langa loudspeakers, right? So one is not going to be like radically different from the other. I'm not talking about like, if you're in love with one, like you're not going to like another one at all, right? They're all very, very good. They're all very, very complete. It's just slightly different perspectives on them. And the thing is that you will find some people have preferences towards those perspectives. Like Wolf was mentioning, like the wideband driver, if you measure it, it's not going to be the cleanest impulse response at 20K just due to physics, right? But if you listen to it, like, you start to think like, do I care? Does it matter? This thing is beautiful. It's intimate. It's just, oh, it's wonderful. Like this thing is delicious. And it's not like, you hear like the cymbals or like Wolf was talking about, like a triangle or like the rosin of a close mic'd violin or something. Like all that is very, very present. Like all of that is still present, even with the London, and that's going to be like, if you measure the top end, it will be the least responsive. Like, it doesn't go to like 30K like the other two. So they're all extremely valid perspectives on it. It's just like Wolf was mentioning, like the dispersion pattern will be a little bit different. The London and the Chicago both are full dipoles. So you're getting the back wave of the mid-range and high frequency drivers that gives them like this like incredibly effortless and the speakers do not exist in the room with those, right? Like it's they kind of pull off the mini monitor trick where it's you close your eyes and it's just like performers in space. They do an exceptional job at reproducing the venue of the performance. Like if the venue information, like the air, the dust, the little particles that gets captured, if that's in the recording, that entire space can be like this kind of big bubble of time, right? Like you've built a time machine and you get to replay these performances. The Berlin is like it's about like dynamics, and again, these are small changes. These are three very close, interpretations of the same performance. They have the same soul. They all feel extremely complete. But like for me, I really enjoy horns. Horns are very dynamic. They can rise and fall just almost instantly, and there's this effortlessness with that I think is really attractive and alluring. An interesting thing about Berlin, again, like maybe compared to other horns, is that the directivity of the horns is very wide. So, a lot of people will come in and say like, horns are not really for me, like it kind of sounds like you're listening through a megaphone, or it's like, kind of attacking you. The Berlin is not like that at all. The Berlin is, like if you blindfolded me, it doesn't like sound quote unquote like horns. It just, you hear the effortlessness, the dynamics, the speed, but you get almost none of that kind of like super megaphony directional pattern. They've got really nice constant directivity, and the speaker is pretty unique in the horn world for that. So yeah, that's just like my subjective thoughts on living with all of them.
Any other questions from our listeners today? Either raise your hand or throw a question into the chat area. So let's see. Steve M says, from Wolf's description, I got the impression that the Chicago is the most sensitive to room acoustics. Is that right? I don't know if you want to speak to that, Colin or Wolf.
Mm, no, of the audio frame systems, I think Berlin is the most sensitive to room acoustics. I think the double 16-inch open baffle construction lets you lack maybe extremely deep bass in some rooms. If the rooms are too large or too lively, this may be the outcome. But in some rooms, I'm wondering every time when I experience that, you just put them and they play. And in some rooms, you have to adjust and you have to experiment with tilting the speakers. And because the heads, I call it head, it is like the two 16-inch Field Coil woofers are a closed module construction together, and you put either the Chicago head on it or the London head on it. Whereas the crossover, the corresponding is we built in the woofer sections, yeah. So you only have to connect two cables, but you are able to adjust even the head with a different tilt angle than the base. And because it is an open baffle, you have a dipole characteristic which is not similar to a box speaker system. So you will the room will be less influenced by the reproduction than normally with a box speaker. But in some cases, you have to position them even more carefully to get the expected results. But it is not like it is more sensitive on room acoustics in general.
Another question, being dipoles, do the London and Chicago also need to be less towed in compared to other speaker types?
We tow in the speakers almost, if they match the roof, almost only slightly. So at the listening position, especially the bass modules, the inner sidewalls are to be seen a little bit. And this is the angle we told them in normally.
Mm-hmm.
We don't angle them too much, but with the heads, they can be adjusted different. And because they stand on top, you can do this. Yeah. So and how I described it before, because the base modules are not only used to up to 100 or 200 hertz, they perform more up. You can adjust the parts you hear from the ground tone or from the higher bass to the lower mid-range by towing. So if you put them more to your position, the bass mid-range transducers, you hear a warmer reproduction. And if you put them a little bit outwards, you hear less of them. And so you can adjust it very nicely to the correct balance.
Great. Will you ever build a larger sealed version of the Sun Ultima with dual field coils?
A good question. um, how you James Bond is saying, never say no, or what? Actually, we don't know. We feel very satisfied with the actual product line, from the smallest speaker with permanent magnets, which is the Serendipity Plus, to the Berlin. We have, even if there are a few price holds within this series, yeah, and we never thought about to be a loudspeaker manufacturer who is able to serve everybody from $200 to $500,000 in steps of, yeah. So at the moment, and fact is, it is very, very difficult to build a speaker that would attract even more people like Son or Ultima, but to be not as expensive as London or Chicago. Because the effort, if we put another field coil speaker, we not only have to put another speaker, we have also to think about a power supply. And therefore, the price gap between Ultima and London is large, but it is only the effort, and it has nothing to do with marketing or things, thoughts about, people can afford or not afford. It builds really the manufacturing effort. We of course, as a loudspeaker manufacturer, you are always playing in your mind with constructions. But we made more attempts to build something in between, and we failed until now. So we decided not to do this. We only to fill the gap. And if we will do it, it has to be another speaker which fits the line.
Okay, I think finally, Wolf, if you could talk a little bit about your horn-loaded subwoofer, the Wagyu, or W, however you want to pronounce that.
I have a friend who loves Goa music and techno, yeah, and it's a long time ago, but every time I visited him, and we had some beers, or we sat together and were happy to live and hear music very loud. And he has a Klipschhorn. I was fascinated because, in my opinion, the bass horn is, especially in the region between 30 and 80 hertz or something, there is almost no speaker system which is better, in my opinion, because it has efficiency, it has extremely dynamics. In this region, the human ear is not extremely sensitive to colors or articulation. If the music which is going on and in the higher regions are correctly and is matching with the bass. So I think this is the reason that there are so many of these cube form subwoofers in the market. And I do not agree at all that they perform really good. And if you listen ever to a really good bass horn, you will experience that it has a totally different performance. And especially for the people who likes the audio frames and have rooms they are larger than we can imagine, we developed. It was not a really large thing, but of course we did not want to have problems with clips regarding the horn contour and something like this. So we developed an own bass horn with a 46 centimeters or 18-inch woofer inside, and to make it possible to connect it very easily, we integrate that with a Hypex module, which can be programmed. And of course, you can leave this off if your thoughts and expectations are even higher, and you can use an analog crossover and whatever amplifier you want. But this construction we call Wagyu, gives you, especially in larger rooms, what the one or other might miss in the very, very low notes. If you have the open Baffle system, yeah, like Audio Frame London, Chicago, or Berlin, and of course it interacts a lot with Berlin because of the horn characteristic. But it could be used also with every other speaker. If someone wants to have energy in the low notes, he should really listen to Wagyu, because it's a fantastic horn speaker.
Yeah, Wagyu is amazing. It is really, really good. That's a fun sub.
Wolf, thank you for a wonderful, informative, detailed explanation of yourself and your company and the speakers. I think we've definitely generated some interest, and hopefully Colin will get some referrals out of this. But I just think, just from a educational standpoint, this is exactly the kind of events I really like to work up with the developers themselves, going in some into the technical side, but also just talking about, the emotional side of what your speakers bring to musical presentation, because hopefully that's what we're all in here, what we're here about, is to become emotionally connected with our music.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed with the time. Time passed by for me very fast. When I heard I have to spend 2 hours on Sunday night, I was a little bit afraid. But it was nice to answer your questions and tell a little bit about my development and my studies. I could talk a lot more, and if there is interest in maybe in a year or something to have a similar thing done again, please call me, and I will do it. I enjoyed it also very much, to have you by in this Zoom, and yeah. To you have the Sunday before you, so enjoy that.